Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy right here. This is the Monta Watches Triumph. And this is a really nice little piece that I'm glad I got a chance to check a look at. That works, I guess. But first off, actually, I want to thank Monta for sending this guy along. That's right, this was provided to me as a review sample loaner from the manufacturer Monta directly. So we have to assume, first off, that this is probably the very best quality-controlled Monta watch ever. And we also have to, I'm trying to let that not affect my review. And of course, I told them that I would give the full good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of it. But nonetheless, keep that in mind, full disclosure. Next thing, let's do a little bit of size comparison. First off, this is not a very large watch. Here it is against an Omega Planet Ocean from a prior generation. So you can see here, it's right in that same sort of ballpark. Here it is against the Citizen BM8180, one of the very best inexpensive sorts of watches that I recommend to people. Here it is against a Casio F91W, which is a slightly different watch in a couple of meaningful ways. And here it is against the Omega Planet Ocean, which is a very nicely finished watch, but a much more expensive one. And then finally, let's do a couple of measurements here real quick. Bust out my newly acquired digital calipers. Whoa, I'm moving on up in the world, guys. Anyways, so just to give you a sense of what's going on size-wise here, without the crown included, we're at 38 across. With the crown included, 41. The lug-to-lug distance on this guy is approximately 46 millimeters here, and the diameter of the face itself looks to be about 32 millimeters. And then, of course, the lug width here for adding your own strap of bracelet is 20 millimeters. And so that should give you a better sense of the size of this guy. Oh, and I'm sorry, the width is another important factor here. Looks like about 9.4 millimeters, which is actually a really nice size. So there you go. So let's go on ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of the little Monta Triumph here that just doesn't want to stay on the table. First off, on the good side, there are lots of good dial options for you. This is the gray dial model, which honestly is the one I find least attractive of the ones that they see. But there's also a black model, a green model, a silver model, and a blue model. Which is, actually, this is the silver. I'm sorry, I misread things. But anyways, nonetheless, there you go. Next thing, size-wise, this is actually a really nice size. I have smaller wrists than most, and so these really big watches, like the Planet Ocean here, can wear a little bit heavy, a little bit huge. But the fact that this guy is relatively small on these dimensions, as well as in the thickness, meant that this was actually really comfy on the wrist. This fits me very, very nicely, and it's a size that not a lot of people are doing these days, so that's great to me. Next thing, this is a very legible watch. I mean, if you take a look at it here, there is just an hour hand and a minute hand. The seconds hand is pretty subtle, and the hour and minute hands are very different from each other. So you really get a strong sense at a glance what time it actually is. I appreciate that very much, and I think it would be even more so on the silver, I'm sorry, on the black dial or the blue dial model, where there's a little bit more contrast between the polished hands and the dial itself. So that's nice. Next thing, the movement on this guy is nice as well. As you can see here, it has an open case back, but the movement inside there is a solid SW300 movement, and it features like, for instance, the date here. And it is actually a quick adjust date. If we unscrew the crown here, then pop that out to the first position, I can advance the day pretty straightforwardly if I turn it the right direction, and so that can be nice. And it also, by the way, because it's a solid SW300, which is a really common movement, this is going to be very easily serviceable. You can take this to pretty much any local watchmaker, and they should be able to do a good job of servicing it, assuming that they're, competent and whatnot. And so that's very nice, compared to some of your higher-end movements that are a little bit more esoteric and you might need to send directly back to the maker. This one you could probably get serviced anywhere, and that's a beautiful thing. And it also has 38 hours worth of power reserve, which is itself pretty excellent. Next thing, as I just showed off, is this has a display back. And display backs are just not all that super common in the world these days. I mean, I guess they're growing increasingly so, but that's a nice thing. And it's one of the joys of a mechanical watch to be able to look in there and see the movement itself. Is this a crazy figured movement? No, not necessarily. This is not the highest finishing quality movement on the face of God's green earth. I mean, we compare it here to the Omega Planet Ocean. You can see here, this movement has been finished much more precisely, much more beautifully, frankly. But that said, this is still pretty damn fine, and I'd like being able to see that there. Next thing, this has a sapphire crystal, which is great. Mineral crystal is much more scratchable. The fact that this is sapphire is just, it's nice, and it's got some anti-reflective coating on the inside of it, which is itself also a nice thing. Sorry, clean this off a little bit here. And so that's good. Next thing, as I mentioned, this has a screw-down crown, which is good for water resistance as well as just in general, and it actually has a fair amount of water resistance. This is 150 meters, 150 feet worth of water resistance here. No, 150 meters. Guys, it's been a long freaking day. Right there. 500 feet, 150 meters. Ay, ay, ay. But anyways, it is very water resistant. What that basically means is you don't have to worry about water with this watch. It's not the best choice for diving, but it's not the best choice for diving. Case freaking closed, problem solved. There you go. Next thing, this is a very comfy bracelet. And it's a very nice bracelet in a couple of ways. I mean, first off, you can see here, there's a lot of flexibility to it. The links aren't too big, and they're nicely articulated, which means this can lay very nicely against your hand. It is also a screw-down link bracelet. As you can see here, it's got flathead driver on one side, and then the other side just screws straight in. And so to adjust this bracelet, you literally just take a screwdriver, and they included one, although it might have just been for review, I'm not sure. But anyways, they included a screwdriver in there, which made it very easy to pop this out and to size it up. This was a joy to resize, 100%. And so I like that very much. And they've also got on this bracelet here, they've got a nice custom clasp to it. So you can see here it's got a clasp, and unlike a lot of them, the way that the clasp is staying shut is the tension of this circular piece here in this hole. So it pops shut there. The nice authoritative click, and then you've got this second part on the top here with the Monta logo and everything. Look, I'm a big fan of this clasp. I think it looks great. I think it works really well. I felt 100% secure with this guy in the wrist. This is a really, really nicely done bracelet. I just got a Breitling with a bracelet that's, terrible compared to this, and so that's very nice. Next thing, there is also the option to get a rubber strap on this guy, a fitted rubber strap. What I mean by that is that the strap itself here is basically, it conforms to the bottom of the case here. It'll work better if I actually, put it on there. But the thing is, that's a beautiful thing. I like that very much because it matches the overall watch. And so it's a nice step. And the fact that the rubber bracelet, too, is nicely branded, that's great. It also will come with a NATO strap, although they didn't send one along. But the newer models are all going to come with a brand new NATO, which is great. The Loom on this guy is actually surprisingly good. I had no problems with late night readability here. I'm going to charge it off camera with a pretty serious flashlight here. And you can see that the Loom is well applied to all of the indices as well as both hands as well as the second hand. This is very, very legible all the way overnight. Certainly these three markers are more legible, but still. Absolutely fine on the Loom. And then finally, there are details freaking everywhere, and I love that about this watch. I'm going to see if I can show off some of them here. I'll zoom in a little bit. You can see here, I hope, yeah, there we go, that the indices are actually cut into the rehaut here. This little area, this slope down around the face, the indices are cut into that, which is great. The hands themselves, as I kind of rotate it, you'll see that the hands are not flat pieces, but instead there's a bend to them, which is great and helps to reflect light. I mean, the fact that the hands are polished at all means that in low light conditions, it can be easier to read this watch just using ambient light that's around there. The indices are actually applied here for some of these. You get the 9, the 12, and the 3 o'clock indices are applied, as well as there is an applied border around the date window down there, which is a beautiful thing. The crystal on it itself is chamfered. You can see as we go to the side here, it's got a nice little chamfer on there, which means it's not going to catch very easily on anything, and it's less likely to break. So that's a beautiful thing. Next thing, and this is a little detail, but it's a great detail. Look at the ring around the bezel basically here. Now look at the brushing. The brushing is done in a circular manner. All of the brushing is coming out from the center of the watch. This is a little thing, but it's a beautiful thing because it's a detail that shows that they gave a damn. They didn't just brush in one direction all the way across the thing. No, they brushed in a way that would be optimally complementing to the face of the watch and to that sunburst pattern on the dial. And by the way, I should point out that nice little sunburst on the dial that you see moving around here. That is nice, and it does add an element of visual intrigue that other flat painted dials just don't seem to have. The case back on it is very nice with a little bit of a shape to it there. That's probably to open it, but also looks pretty. It has a nice labeled crown here with the Monta logo on there, which really does look like a bunch of brackets, by the way, from typography speaking, which is fine, I guess. It has a nice polished link on this on the clasp here, although the rest of the links are there. But it also has chamfers on the side of each link on the bracelet, and those chamfers are polished, which is really, really, really impressive. And the fact that they've detailed the movement a little bit here. Look, this knife, I'm sorry, I review a lot of knives too. This watch is really replete with details, and I appreciate that very much, especially at this kind of price point. It's easy for companies to cheap out at this kind of a price, and they didn't at all here. And to me, that is absolutely great about the Monta here. And so all of that is the good here. It's got incredible details pretty much everywhere in it. It's got very nice loom. It includes a NATO strap. A fitted custom rubber strap is also available at a slightly lower price than the bracelet. It has a very comfy bracelet, though, with screwed links and a custom clasp. It has a screw-down crown, which is nice, sapphire crystal, water resistance, a display case back, a nice movement, legible, great size, and lots of dial options. On the great side to me is actually the fact that they've regulated this watch. What I mean by that is that there are lots of companies out there, particularly among the smaller micro brands, who will sell multi-$1,000 watches with no guarantee of accuracy. They will sell you a watch, and then if it runs 10 seconds a day fast, they're just like, yep, that's how it goes. And that is so deeply freaking ugly. It's unacceptable. Whereas these folks, these are regulated to within plus or minus 5 seconds a day. That means at the very worst, this watch will be minus 5 seconds a day slow or plus 5 seconds a day fast. That's not great, honestly, that standard, but you know what? The fact that they're willing to stand by it, that is a guarantee, is a beautiful thing, and that is how it needs to be. As far as I'm concerned, you are simply not allowed to sell a watch for over $1,000 that is not within that kind of a spec. I'm sorry, that's not acceptable when other brands do it, and so I love the fact that Monta, even as a micro brand that is really aiming towards a more budget sort of price point, is regulating their watches. That is great. And this one has lived up to that spec, running about 3 seconds a day fast for me, which is excellent. So to me, what is great here is that they have taken the time to regulate the watch when so many small micro brands do not, and that is so unacceptable when they don't. What is bad about this guy? Because there are some bad issues here. First off, these are kind of nitpicks because I don't really expect them, but it'd be nice. There is no independent hour hand feature. What I mean by that is that on some watches, for instance, the Planet Ocean here, which I'll give you, is a very different movement. It's a much more expensive watch. But this has an independent hour hand feature where you can keep the seconds running and just change the hour. And this is great for when you're traveling. If you get in a plane, you can just, twirl that a little bit and you change your time zone without losing the accuracy of the watch. And it's another way to deal with quick set date. It's a beautiful thing. I'd like to see that here, but, they're at the mercy of the movement. Whatever, not a big deal. The other thing that I'd like to see here is the right here, you've got a quick adjust in that it's got these 4 holes. And so using a spring bar tool, you can push this forward and then move this in or out to get about a link's worth of adjustment. But I'm kind of tired of tool requiring quick adjusts. I much prefer systems like a bunch of other companies now offer where there's some kind of thing in the bracelet itself where you can press down and then get a little bit more bracelet or a little bit less very quickly for, without any kind of tool. This becomes second nature, and once you've had that kind of adjustability, you will never want to give it up. And so I do miss it here, and I hope that that's something as they work on their clasps in the future that they're able to do and to do a little bit better. But those two things are nitpicks because this is still budget, for at least for the mechanical world. A couple of other things. There is no crown guard on this guy. What I mean by that is that the crown is just completely and totally exposed. There's no piece of metal surrounding the crown that if you come at this, if you hit a door frame or something on it, this crown will take the entire brunt of it, and it'll also catch on things a little bit more readily, easy, like putting on a backpack or something. Not a big deal, but it's a deal. Next thing, the clasp on this guy is actually very long. What I mean by that is if we compare the clasp itself when closed to, for instance, this Aquaterra here, you can see that the Aquaterra clasp is relatively short as opposed to this guy, which is pretty big. And that just means that on somebody with smaller wrists like myself, the entire bottom of my wrist is all basically going to be clasp. And that may mean it won't fit as comfortably for people with very, very small wrists. Not a big deal, but it's a deal. Getting into slightly more annoying things, I don't know why they put the numbers on here. This is not really a field watch in the classical sense. I mean, to me, this is a field watch. This is doing that. That's not necessarily what this is after, and putting those numbers in there just kind of feels like it clutters up the dial to me. Look, I know where 11 is. I know where 3 is. I don't love that necessarily, and especially given that they could have, spent that time and put a little bit more visual intrigue with fully applied indices. That would have been nice. And actually, that brings me to my next point. Like I said, only the 9, the 3, and the 12 are actually applied indices. The rest of them are painted on. It's still painted on with Loom, so that's okay, but I would like to see fully applied indices. Like, for instance, you get on the Planet Ocean here. Again, that's not super fair because this is a much more expensive watch, but I would like to see more application of indices and less painting on. And I think that would make the watch look a little bit nicer. Next thing, the bracelet here, the snap on this guy is serious business. It really does take some pushing to get this guy on. And so putting this guy on, there is a point where it's just like, holy crap, I'm pushing there. That means it's absolutely secure. Even if this little clasp thing isn't locked, this bracelet is not freaking going anywhere. But that is absolutely something to keep in mind. Next thing, with the gray dial specifically, I found this to be pretty low in contrast. With the sunburst on there, I found that there were many situations in which this watch was harder to read, particularly with these painted on indices, than I would have liked. I mean, you can see right here, the 2 o'clock index is basically lost just because of the reflectivity of the dial there, and the fact that it is entirely applied, or painted on there. Not a big fan of that, but it's probably going to be better on the blue or the black or something like that. Next thing, on the rubber strap here, this is actually just a plain, good old-fashioned vanilla rubber strap. There's nothing else to it here. It is not a deployant clasp. It doesn't have, well, like this is a deployant clasp here. And that's something I'd like to see. If you're selling a dedicated rubber strap with fitted ends and whatnot, that's a way to make it seem a lot nicer and a way to make it fit a lot nicer for a lot of people. Not a big deal, but it's still something I like to see on these higher end pieces. Then finally, the price on this guy is still relatively high for a wristwatch. I mean, not in the luxury market world, but this is a $1,500 watch on a bracelet here. It's $1,375 on a bracelet. I'm sorry, on the rubber. That's a fair amount of money. Mind you, I don't think they're ripping me off here. It's very well finished for $1,500. It is well regulated, but it is still $1,500 for a 3-hand watch with an off-the-shelf movement. So they do have to earn that price point. I think they've done it well, but that's going to be a deal breaker for a lot of people. $1,500 is a lot of money to spend on something that goes on your wrist and it tells time. I mean, mind you, you can spend a whole lot more money still, but yeah. So to me, that's the bad here, is that it is still an expensive watch, although the value is absolutely there. There is no deployant clasp on the rubber, which I kind of felt a little bit unpleasant. It has a low contrast dial, especially given not all the indices are actually applied. Some of them are just painted on there. It has a very hard snap to undo in the bracelet here. It's got the written numbers, which I don't feel like need to be on there. It's got a very, very long clasp, which isn't going to be comfortable with some wrists. It has no crown guard, which can catch on things, and it doesn't have an independent hour hand or a toolless quick adjust, both of which I'd really love to see on here. On the ugly front, honestly, I didn't find anything that I found truly ugly about this watch. I think it's really, really well done. And actually, that takes me right into the final conclusion. This is a great watch. It really, really is. I put this guy on the first day and was, kind of giving it a once-over as some code was freaking running. And I was just really impressed because it is nicely made. It is beautifully finished. Really, they have hit on details that a lot of companies are not coming anywhere near, like the side of the bracelet here. At this kind of price point, a lot of companies are doing nothing like that at all. And it is also beautifully accurate. The fact that they did that regulation is huge. And so even though this is an expensive watch, $1,500 is a lot of money to spend on a wristwatch, this winds up feeling like very, very good value to me. And honestly, it shows just how nuts the pricing from the major companies has gotten. I love the Planet Ocean. It is a great piece, but $6,500 versus $1,500, given the level of finishing that you're seeing across here, given all of the various things, there's a lot of markup in here. And a Rolex and Omega and all those are really kind of taking us for a ride. And it makes some of the other microbrand stuff seem pretty lacking too. I mean, seriously, if we compare this to, for instance, the Zen 104, which is a watch that I've had on the channel, had a full review of, thinking about the bracelet on the Zen, that was miles behind this guy, even though it was basically the same price. The case finishing, miles behind. Look at these little polished portions in the middle there. Miles behind, even though it was the same price. And the regulation thing is absolutely huge, because other brands will sell you a watch that's just this expensive with no guarantee of accuracy at all. And this is a timepiece. It has one freaking job. job. And the maker has one job, which is to make it tell time right. And the fact that they're willing to do that, so anyways, that is a major value-added thing relative to a lot of the other micro brands who are just lazy as heck for not doing that. A couple of other things. This watch should also have a quartz option. I am a quartz proponent. I think that quartz is a great solution for a lot of people, and I think that a watch that is this beautifully made with a nice quartz movement in there would provide a really compelling option for people who work with magnetic fields on a regular basis, for people who can't afford to have a watch that will die if they take it off their wrist for 38 hours, etc. This could be a super compelling piece with a nice quartz movement in there, and I hope that they do that in the future. And especially if they get one of those nice high accuracy, oh man, be still my beating heart. But that's more a personal request from Monta there. But look, honestly, this is a great watch. This is really, really good. And it is a great value. Monta is making a watch here that is finished like watches you see from people like Tudor, from Longines, although maybe slightly higher than Longines in terms of finishing. And it's approaching Omega and Rolex very quickly. And they're regulating it well so its accuracy. And they're selling it at a price that, although it's absolutely high, is very, very reasonable in the world of luxury mechanical watches. And so this is a really impressive piece that has absolutely impressed the heck out of me. And if they drop something in the future that is more my style, I will absolutely be considering. So there you go. This is a great watch. It is damn near a gem. It may even be. I may be biased. I don't freaking know. But nonetheless, it is spectacular, and I really do recommend it if you're looking for an inexpensive watch, and this particular design is tickling your fancy here. Inexpensive for luxury, that is. Hope this has been interesting to you, that the mounting evidence has convinced you that this was a good thing, and this was a triumph of good reviewing, and that you have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.